Neera Sharma was supposed to join. Unfortunately, she had a health emergency and won't be able to make it. But I think we have a fairly exciting panel with very different sort of backgrounds. So it should be an interesting discussion. Thank you, Sameet, Rupesh, and Kaizad for joining. Uh, when the pandemic started, my own personal view was that probably M&A activities deals will stop. And you know, if you ask around, most people thought the same. What happened after that was a surprise, which was that M&A activity, private equity transaction activity, actually instead of slowing down, picked up pace. Private equity activity in India is at a historic high. M&A activity is also across sectors. It has been very active. Transactions have been taking place. So much to, I think, everyone's surprise, activity has not slowed down. It has actually gone, it has picked up pace. However, things are not normal, and the way we used to do things before the pandemic has changed. A lot of the things that we used to take for granted, something as simple as getting stamp paper and having authorized signatories, negotiating in person and over a cup of coffee, sort of agreeing to a certain set of deal terms. A lot of that is no longer possible, or was not possible for the longest time. But so every deal professional has had to innovate, adapt, and change, and continue doing activities. So the idea of this panel is to sort of explore how that change has happened. We have three eminent practitioners who will share their perspective over the next hour. Before I sort of get into the more technical sort of discussion on M&A, I think it'll be useful to start with just some personal context. How was, and Kaizad, maybe I start with you. I know not only you took over as the general counsel in the middle of the pandemic, and Arcelor has been very active on the M&A front and all other fronts. So how was the whole experience, the transition from joining a new organization and right in the middle of the pandemic, leading a team there, and also doing a whole set of deals and matters? So maybe Kaizad, let's start with that, and then we can go to Sameet and Rupesh.
No, thanks, Sudip, and good evening, everyone. Sudip, yeah, absolutely. What you mentioned, the thought process was that pandemic is really going to impact M&A deals, but to the contrary, we are seeing a lot happening in the M&A space, and particularly ArcelorMittal. You would see a lot is happened in the last year and a half. So my experience, if you talk about my transition, I was a bit skeptical initially, because I moved in between this phase. And, typically for a senior leader, it's very important to connect with all the stakeholders. Unless you connect, you get a feel of what's going on in the industry, what's the thought process. Only then you are able to really jump into the big deals that are going on. But having said that, and with this skepticism that I had, but I think all played out well. My transition was well planned. Even during pandemic times, I was, on the virtual platform, it really helped to connect with people. But having said that, I still feel a bit of physical connect, a connect, you still, probably I'm still the old school thought. I would like to really connect and meet face to face certain people. That I always felt. See, it's always good to be there virtually. People are talking, but you're still not getting the satisfaction that you would get otherwise. You would see the individual face to face. That part was missing, and immediately as things opened up, I planned that, and I started meeting people face to face to some extent, and meeting particularly the senior leaders, visiting some of our units, speaking to people. Although I was doing that virtually, but still I think I felt that a personal touch, a personal connect, particularly for a new incumbent who is coming in a very large organization, and which is into this growth path. There is so much happening. It is absolutely necessary to connect. Otherwise, you don't get the feel, you don't get the satisfaction. But all in all, I think I personally think the pandemic has really not impacted any of our plans. We have gone as per our plans. We are going very strong. We are doing everything that otherwise we would have done if this pandemic wouldn't have been there. Thanks, Sudip.
I guess one question before I go to Sameet is, your team itself is a fairly young, dynamic team because they were all acquired after Arcelor acquired SR Steel. So how did you sort of manage? They've also not been in the system for a very long period of time. They probably joined a year or so before you did. A lot of them come from law firm background. So how did you manage that team? How did that team respond to the situation?
The team is fantastic. My style or my approach is always to connect and stay connected with the team 24/7. Although I have not physically met my team, although I met the different stakeholders into face-to-face meetings, but still my team I have not physically met because they are scattered. Some are in Delhi, some are in Indore, some are in different parts of India. But having said that, I haven't felt that I have missed anything. With my weekly meetings, catch-ups, I think we have been able to get through this, and absolutely, I don't even feel the urge or the need to really connect or meet face to face because I've been discussing with them so much over this period of time. So it's just fantastic. But yes, you're right. The team is scattered, team is good, team is young, fantastic to be with them.
Sameet, what was your experience?
So I would say, we were actually in the middle of 2 deals when this whole pandemic happened. So there was a lot of exciting plans, a lot of exciting things, a lot of traveling on the papers. So you'll not believe. In fact, I was at Singapore and I had to go to Indonesia after that, and we were in the meetings and all. I came back to Singapore, and Singapore airport was kind of all stopped, and there was no flight from there. And but with great difficulty, I was able to come back. And when I reached office, everybody was like, "Oh, you came from Singapore, please go away, don't come to the office." And that was the point when the lockdown actually started and people stopped coming to the office. So we were actually in the middle of the 2 deals, which was not very big deals, but the small deals. And then, everything suddenly changed for us. What do we do? All the travel plans were there. All the travel plans was cancelled. People, meetings started, online meetings started. And then there was initially, there was no satisfaction of anything. What do we do? We had to plan, kind of a due diligence, meeting suppliers, some agriculture business were there, meeting, go to the actual place, see the crops, etc. Meeting, people, employees there. Some sort of plans which were already there in the checklist certainly got managed, and we were all basically in the online mode. Then due diligence started. There was no satisfaction. Now everyone is very comfortable with online meetings, online. But initially, it was like, what are we doing actually? How do I check the documents? Oh, this is the data room they have provided now. This is the way. This is the kind of scanning. Legal consultant was very, was also in a very confused stage. What do we do? Thereafter, some couple of documents really feel like, for example, paper land documents. We are not able to verify land documents. How do we do that? The land documents, unless you go and get it verified for the registry office and all. Today is happening, but so this was actually initial period of 15, 20 days. A month was very, very difficult for us, and then we all got used to it, and then things actually happened very smoothly. The fact is that everyone was so cooperative in this pandemic to each other. Whenever there were issues, there were several solutions, available with the people. And we really realized that on the table when you're sitting and you're doing, your tone was different. But, when you're doing physical meetings and, everyone is in difficulty, the tone was, empathy and sympathy. Everything was there in the tones. And in terms of documentation, in terms of support, in terms of legal consultancy, everything we got in very. And then thereafter, during the pandemic, we did again another deal, which is absolutely from beginning to end was during on the online platform only, including the board meeting. I'm a company secretary myself, so I know in my career of 30 years, this was the first time that we are doing the board meeting sitting at our home, AGM sitting at our home, all the resolutions are being passed, chairman sitting at home. So, but everything is on the. So now it looks like it's very, very normal, frankly. And I think you're right. The deals have not stopped. Corona, no corona, things keep going on, kept going on. And I think the first half of 2021 is really, really very great in terms of the deal. So overall scenario looks good, frankly.
Yes, Sameet, the question is that DCM is obviously a very well-known, established company, and I'm sure you had processes which were quite set for a long period of time. How was the reaction within the organization to change? Online meetings, everything virtual, digital. Organizationally, was the change easy, or did you find that transition?
I think things were really easy. People are actually taken it in a very positive mode. Initially, we were, for example, we senior leader team were meeting to the managing directors in, every fortnight kind of a thing. And then we used to have a core committee meeting and all. Initially, we didn't have those meetings for the 1 year, 1 month or 2 months. And then suddenly we realized that we have to get back to the business. And then, the managing directors, the senior leadership, everyone becomes so comfortable on the Zoom meetings and these video calling meetings, and things started again. So, and then, our team meeting, our HR program, and Diwali functions, holy functions, kind of a thing. So everything started going on, and people have actually taken it in a very positive way. And there was no, I don't think there was any kind of shortcoming which we felt that, we are not living in that era. When the lockdown opened and things started coming to a little normal, like we have today, people were ready to go to the office. They were tempted to go to the office. Actually, they're saying, no. Before the third wave comes, let's go office for a couple of days at least, and let's see. Then we have to get back again to the home. But absolutely, initially, except initial 1 month or so things were actually kind of a normal. I think. And this is fantastic, I would say.
Rupesh, I know you've always been in Bangalore and servicing, very demanding investment professionals all over the world, Singapore, Bombay, Delhi. So maybe among the few people who was always ready for this virtual sort of work, you're probably one of them. How was your experience? I know PE activity generally on Everstone has been very, very active over the last year and a half. So what was your experience?
Sure. Thanks, Sudip. Am I audible?
Yes.
Great. Thanks for having me on this panel, Sudip, first and foremost, and good evening, everyone, all the panelists and others who have joined this session. I'll start with a disclaimer that obviously I don't want to give a positive spin to pandemic, but for us, the experience has been a mixed bag, some good, some bad. I'll start with good things. A good thing was that obviously one thing which Sudip mentioned, personally, I enjoyed this entire virtual thing. I mean, obviously we were virtual mostly because the kind of structure we have. Our headquarters are in Singapore, and we have multiple offices across the globe. So we were very used to the virtual way of interaction. But obviously, I mean, in India is a face-to-face culture. I think Kaizad mentioned earlier. So we love face-to-face interactions, but for us, the transition from physical to virtual was in fact very smooth. A lot of people, they preferred this mode. In terms of transactions, like I said, it was a mixed bag for us. So when the pandemic started last year, around in the first quarter, there was obviously a lot of dilemma in terms of whether how we want to use our cash, whether we go ahead with our investment plans, or we preserve some cash for existing investments to support them. So that dilemma was obviously there initially, and like everything else, things slowed down. But I think when we moved to the second half of the year, things started picking up, because we kind of realized that sitting idle is not the best way in the kind of business we are. So there was a lot of focus on the exits for us. We thought that some of the businesses, this is the right time to exit. Thankfully, there's some good deals we did in the second half of the last year. So overall, approximately, we did transactions worth more than $1 billion, including investment and exit. So I wouldn't say it was a bad year for us. It was a good year. And then, when we moved to 2021, there was, in terms of M&A focus, I would say we were mostly, we were very much like, pre-pandemic time in terms of building the pipeline for the transactions, looking at the deals. Everybody was very comfortable doing diligences, negotiations through online mode. And of course, some relaxation in travel movement, etc., was available, so that helped. But yeah, so overall for us, the pandemic did not really affect the business much.
Great to hear. I guess the first sort of topic I wanted to discuss with this panel was execution of deals. By now, of course, all of us have figured out most processes, but I think when we started in the initial months, I remember all the things that I've sort of taken for granted in my professional life. Suddenly one had to think and innovate. So something like having someone print pages and sign them. I remember we were doing a deal actually for one of Rupesh's funds at that point of time, and we had to get on a call because nobody in the deal team actually, on the client side, not many people had printers at home, so there were not enough signatories who could sign documents, and at that time there was no e-commerce delivery happening, and that's sort of a call that has never happened. It was interesting to just figure out, well, how do you get pages signed? And then finally it turned out that I had a printer at home, and one of somebody at that fund was my neighbor. So then he came over and we sat together and printed 40 odd pages for this loan documentation and signed it and scanned it back. This is someone fairly senior who I think manages about $2.5 to $3 billion of real estate assets. So it was kind of fun to see two of us sit and print documents and scan them and send it. But it's an interesting, it was a sign of the interesting times that we are in. Sameet, what was your experience? And then we'll go to Kaizad and Rupesh. Especially, I know you're a company secretary, and I'm sure there were people saying, why can't we do a board meeting? Why can't we do a EGM? EGM needs to happen, all of that. What was the experience in the initial few months? And I know at that time, even MCA clarifications and all had not come about, which created anxiety. So maybe if you could get into some of that as well.
Yes, so you're right, Sudip. In the for example, the quarterly board meeting to approve the annual accounts, the law initially was that you can't approve annual accounts in a VC meeting also. So this, up to that extent, we had our company law. And initially, when the lockdown happened, we were supposed to have our board meeting in the month of I think May, immediately after lockdown. So we thought of postponing the board meeting, and after that we thought maybe it'll be a temporary thing, and I think the things will be over soon, kind of a thing. But then we realized no, it's not going to be over soon. So by that time, I think MCA also came out with the clarification that you can have video meeting for the annual accounts approval, accounts approval also, and also everyone started doing VC meeting. So first of the VC meeting was really a very different experience. Chairman sitting at home, I'm sitting at my home, director sitting at their home, and we were worried whether they'll be able to log in properly or not, kind of a thing, Zoom meetings. But thankfully, everyone was very smoothly did the meeting, and we were very happy when we had our first board meeting. Likewise, when we had our first AGM in a virtual mode, that was a kind of a challenge as a company secretary. But everything happened in a very, I would say, there was a lot of support from the people, but things happened very smoothly, I would say. People were really happy. Shareholders were also happy. And regarding documentation and all, there's a lot of documents. Generally, there was a tendency of printing off documents, signing documents, and getting it done, delivered. Then we, as a company secretary, always in favor of doing a digital signatures, So when I start telling to the people in the organization also that why don't we use the digital signature? We got all the DSC made for all the senior people. Wherever you have to sign, print PDF, put your DSC and immediately mail it. No need to get it print and then sign it physically. And mind you, these digital signatures era has actually started now, and this has actually very great improvement, a very great asset we have in our system now, that we have digital signature, PDF print, and all kind of a thing. We were actually using these for MCAs and income tax, and you really can't tamper with the document also. If it is a document of 100 pages and it's a PDF converted and then you digital signature, you can't really change even a single word in that. And if you do that, the digital signature will remove automatically. So that's a very foolproof system. I don't know why people were not using it. Now, in all the deals, in all the sensitive things, board meeting related issues, general meeting related issues, we started using all the digital signatures of the people sitting there, put the digital signature, PDF, put signature, email it, and then, other Google Drive or something. So I think this system, which has started, signing paper, sign the last page and put all other paper in between, keep on changing the paper. So I think digital signature have really proved a good asset to us, plus MCA clarifications and MCA circular, which helped a lot in terms of giving extension of time, giving particularly AGM and EGM through VC modes, dispensing the requirement of sending annual report in a physical modes. These things really helped us. I think things were really very smooth for us. We didn't face any problem, frankly, during this pandemic. Yeah.
Very good point you make, and I think I guess a question would be that in terms of MCA response and SEBI also, did you think that that was they responded in time by giving the exemptions and
absolutely they were really very proactive, and this was the time when we have really seen them great action, secretary MCA calling people, calling meetings, asking suggestions from senior people, asking suggestions from chairman, company secretaries, CI forum, other forum. I mean, I have been on many forums where secretary himself was in the meeting, Zoom meeting, asking suggestions, what all we should do, how can we, make the things smoother. Then there was SEBI's, SEBI also was very proactive. In any case, SEBI for all these things. So this time we really seen such an action in the department and the function, and things were actually happened timely. And yeah, this was really good. Really appreciated.
Kaizad, like while the corporate office was shut, all your facilities were going full function, and in fact, probably even higher than normal. And obviously, all these facilities have compliances, issues, people, all of that. So, how was that experience? And obviously, deals were also happening and signatures, etc., to be organized within the organization, an organization which you yourself are fairly new to. How did you sort of navigate both at the facility level and also the corporate level where a lot of deal activity was happening?
No, Sudip, I think these were very challenging times. We were running the plants at full capacity, but the pandemic wave in Gujarat, particularly some of our employees at the plants and all, and many of them young guys were stumbled under because of this. And but at the same time, the production was continuing. The organization took proactive steps to, because we are a steel manufacturer, so we set up a hospital in some 48 hours or something, and provided, because we are manufacturing oxygen, so we provided oxygen facilities. I think all credit, the whole team, the whole organization worked together to help people, to help employees, to help everyone. Now, coming back on the point which Sameet mentioned, I think initially I personally was a bit struggling, with you generally large volume documents, you take printouts, you look at those documents, you underline, you read them. But sometimes reading virtually some of those documents becomes a challenge. So, but over a period of time, you gradually understand that this is requirement because there are limitations in your home printer and all. It's not the same the way in which you could print documents in your office and all. So those were some of the challenges. We quickly changed. We quickly adapted to some of those changes. As Sameet mentioned, digital signature. We created an email where any contract that is being executed, we put in the email itself. It's signed. It's a scanned copy is signed. PDF is signed. But you mentioned that once the pandemic is over, parties will physically sign and close this. But until then, this would be treated as a binding contract. There were challenges with parties supplying, contractors, missing timelines, getting onto calls with them. I think overall, that's a different point altogether. But overall, even the support from the government, particularly the courts. The courts started operating virtually. The board meetings and all, were held virtually. So everything changed. Everything changed to facilitate. There were teething problems initially, but I think finally it got ironed out, and people are now comfortable. People have now started thinking that whether that should be the norm or this should be the norm. So that's what the pandemic has also taught us, how to quickly adapt, quickly change to some of these requirements. So all in all, I think any kind of change is good, is positive, and I think it has a good impact going forward.
You're absolutely right. And what Sameet and you both mentioned, one, the digital signature, like Sameet was saying, that it's something that I think has been around. A lot of people have had digital signatures. It's just that nobody's bothered to use them in contracts until now. And even with the point that you're mentioning, that with virtual courts and even regulatory meetings, like say Competition Commission now being held virtually, we'll come to Rupesh in a minute, but Rupesh and I have been to many times we had to go to Delhi to just for a half an hour, 45-minute meeting with a regulator to explain our position, just because, regulators never entertained, virtual meetings. So maybe there are, some of these things which, even if the pandemic, whenever it gets over, hopefully soon, one can sort of take from and adapt. Rupesh, I know at the fund level, obviously you've always been fairly digital, but I know you also handle a lot of portfolio companies who perhaps are not as deal savvy as the investment professionals and you. How was it for them sort of taking them through this new digital world, with those challenges that Kaizad and Sameet were mentioning, how did you sort of navigate that piece?
So on, I think, secretarial front, at least I never experienced any issues at the portfolio companies level. So I assume that everything is going on smooth there. But at in the transactions which we did during the pandemic, obviously diligence and negotiations, given the fact that we have been doing that part of the transactions largely virtual, even in pre-pandemic time, it didn't change much. But there are a few areas where we experienced a lot of problems. So one of them is in the closing process. So in one transaction, we were not able to close for around a month because, and this was during the peak of pandemic, because the buyer was supposed to pay the stamp duty on demat shares, which they were buying from us. And for that, there was some requirement to go to the bank and then, get some receipt or something, some paper from the bank, deposit money online and all of that. So, there was a delay of around a month in that. So that's one thing which we experienced, stamp duty payment part. Secondly, what we experienced is problematic experience was, like you said, the interaction with the regulators and the filings with regulators, particularly. I mean, we did IPO during the pandemic, there we face all these problems where you have to necessarily submit all the documents in physical copies of all the documents, and they are like very, very voluminous documents, like thousands of pages. So managing all of that, scanning all of that is obviously a logistical challenge, which we saw. And apart from that, we were trying to do a NCLT demerger in one of the portfolio companies, and these issues were very, very, very critical in that process, where a lot of documents have to be filed with the NCLT. They only accept, the registry will only accept physical filings. They don't have any online filing system. For every follow-up, you have to go and meet the registrar. So some of those things we experienced. So NCLT, and apart from NCLT, the other regulators also, like CCI, for example. CCI was comparatively much more smoother, but nevertheless, there was a requirement of physical interaction. And lastly, the other issue which we faced during pandemic time is with respect to income tax. So in one portfolio company, they had certain tax litigations ongoing. We wanted to sell the company, and before that, we wanted to settle all the litigation with the tax department. Now, given the offices were shut, and you had to go and meet them personally and all of that, so you just can't do some of those things virtually, and then we had to wait for the offices to open, and when they opened, then the process started. But still, it just takes a lot of time because because of these limitations. And lastly, apostolization is another thing which I saw as a roadblock in some of the things. For example, if you have a foreign shareholder in your Indian company, and if you're filing a merger scheme, the consent has to be apostolized from the embassy of the foreign jurisdiction, right? Now, to do that, obviously the embassies are closed, so you just wait. You just can't do anything. You can't expedite the process. So to reach the starting point itself, it just takes like, in normal time where it takes just a month, here it takes 6 months, 1 year. You don't know, you never know. So, and then then it becomes very difficult to predict the outcome of your process, because things are not under your control at all for some of those things. Yeah, I think these are some things, few things which I experienced.
These are very good points. I think one which I took a good quick reaction from both Sameet and Kaizad, it's this stamp duty. Every state has it. We all need to pay it on a regular basis. Why is it not easy? Right? We otherwise are leaders in digital payments, right? You can do Paytm, BillDesk, all of that. But stamp duty every time in every state, uh, it's become digital. It's probably better than probably where it is, but there is still that it's not as seamless as one would expect, and a lot of it got especially in the first half when banks were closed and you couldn't go pick up the challan or the frank paper from the stockholding corporation. Every state, every law firm was doing their own sort of internal note on how to get stamp paper during the crisis, and like Rupesh was mentioning. Isn't there like an easier way in which we can just agree to pay the stamp duty and just make life simpler for all the legal professionals out there who are trying to get agreements executed? It's just seems that in every state, I don't know what your own experience have been, but we are still not fully there. Of course, we have made progress, but still not 100% there. Kaizad and then Sameet.
Sudip, yeah, I think there are challenges, but still we have achieved a lot. I would say digitally, we have progressed significantly. At least I can see Maharashtra, state of Maharashtra, things. If you have to pay a stamp duty on a real estate deal or something, it just happens seamlessly. In some other states, probably there may be some challenges here and there, but also I think it's got to do with the whole pandemic and the timing during which you really wanted to address some of these issues. If today, probably in some states, and when you were in the peak of pandemic, at that point in time, maybe there could be some banking challenges or some other small challenges because of which things wouldn't have moved. But by and large, I think digital, to a large extent, India has progressed significantly. Maybe a bit of tweaking and here and there, we will be able to really overcome this. I agree, it's not 100% comfortable to the extent what we expect it to be business friendly. But I think we are there, but still a little bit more push needs to be given to this.
Sameet?
Yeah, I agree. Actually, we have actually achieved a lot of this thing. We have crossed almost, a very substantial way towards that. And I think pandemic has actually moved it a little faster. During the pandemic, since all the online stamp duties and all were, everyone knew that, you have to do it online and all. So system have actually become a little proactive, a little faster. And we really don't see much of the problem nowadays by paying stamp duties in Delhi. And I think most of the things are happening quickly now. We don't see much of a problem in that. In fact, you will not believe that in one of the country we had to, I'm not talking from the stamp duty point of view, but from the notary point of view, I'm talking. In one of the country, we had to submit a document wherein we were doing some transaction, and it was a share purchase agreement kind of thing, and we have to submit that to the authority for approval. And the local law was that it has to be notarized, in a local notary there. We were worried that how do we do that? We have to authorize somebody who will sign there. And suddenly we got a call from the lawyer office that that notary, they have authorized notary to do a video call, and they will be there in the video call. You will be there in the video call, and then they will see witness to, and they'll notarize there only in that country. So we are surprised to see that is still to happen in India actually. But things have actually moved faster in these areas, stamp duty, notarization, and all, and people have actually started, reposing faith in each other, and understanding each other. Businesses have started understanding each other. Even in banks, we were sometimes giving documents on the scan signature to say, okay, we'll accept right now, but later you can give the physically signed document when there was an urgent need. So I think things have moved faster in my view, and yes, of course, there's some more to be done, but up to some extent we have moved a little. We have crossed substantial path in that way.
It's a very interesting point, Samit. And Kaizad, before I move on to the next topic quickly, just a quick thought. I know you are part of an organization. You are actually a joint venture between two of the largest steel companies in the world. So India, in comparison to the rest of your colleagues around the world, do you find it at par, or were we ahead, or in terms of our response to dealing with the pandemic and deals during that? Or was it did all of your colleagues have some similar sort of?
No. I think it's not comparable. It's not. India is different. The challenges are different, but certainly I think India has managed the whole pandemic situation very efficiently. I think it's all credit to the government, to the various stakeholders who are supporting the government, the healthcare workers. I don't believe that there is anything we could have. There's always something which you will know, which you will, on hindsight, you will see that there is some room for improvement. But I think all in all, I would say India government has really done a fantastic job in managing the situation, even providing vaccines. I know for sure that in some of the countries, in developed countries also, the availability of vaccine is not so easy. But the way in which we have kind of helped through the digital platform, the way in which the COVID app and all has really seamlessly managed the whole system of vaccination. I think it's fantastic. It's all credit to the government of India.
That's correct. I think with one aspect which I think Rupesh had briefly touched upon, and in the context of regulators, is that despite the virtual meetings, he felt the need to go and have in-person sort of interactions, because that's really when the the proverbial file sort of moves, which is you have to be in front of SEBI, CCI. I think CCI, also from my own experiences, seem to be much more open to virtual meetings and things, but with certainly other government departments and regulators, it was I think the personal touch still sort of goes a long way. But there's a larger question there, which is it's not about government regulators. Also in meetings and when we are doing transactions, there is something about personal chemistry, about being in the same room or taking someone aside for a 5-minute, and having a discussion with them. During the pandemic, I've heard two schools of thoughts. One, a friend of mine who works as a senior lawyer at a private equity fund, actually wrote a very long LinkedIn post, but her point essentially was that, look, virtual meetings are very efficient. We don't need to travel, and so travel time is saved. In any meeting, there are obviously often there's maybe some legal points, but there are also tax points, commercial points. So I can step out when there is my area of interest is not being discussed and do other things. And I'm in my home office setup, so it's easier for me to, if I was in say a counterparty's office, even if I step out, other than making a few calls, there is a limitation on the things that I can achieve. So there are obviously arguments for doing more virtual meetings, but the sort of counter narrative to that is that deals actually get done in person. That you need to be able to sit together with someone and say, okay, here are the 5 things that we today disagree on. This is how we can find solutions. There's a little bit of personal chemistry, even between, say, external lawyers and in-house counsel. If you have never met, then it sometimes becomes difficult to work as a team together and sort of negotiate. So there are 2 sides to the story. I thought I'll get each of your perspectives. Maybe Sameet, we can start with you. Virtual negotiations or physical? What's your preference and what's been your?
I think you're right. Initially, even we were of the view, and I was of the strong view that how the things will happen in a virtual meeting, because unless and until you meet, there's a kind of a energy which is created when you meet in a boardroom or in a meeting room with the documents, and people are laughing, people are having coffees and all, and then actually the deals are happen, and that's the way the deal happens, and that's the way we should be doing it, because personal chemistry very important, body language is very important, scenario and decorum, and all these things are very important, the way you are travel. But then after some meetings virtually, we realize, yeah, this is actually the best way of doing it. And today I would say that I think you save a lot of travel time, you save a lot of other things. Immediately when you get into the meeting, you come to the point. You are so focused for the meeting in the virtual meeting that you are not talking here and there. You're only talking on the focus point. The focus solutions are there. People are actually thinking that, immediately get the solution done. Sometimes, you feel, okay, before we get disconnected or there's a bandwidth issue, let's get the deal done. And I think, so today I am of the firm view that video meetings or the online meetings are really fruitful, and it's worth having these meetings. Particularly, you can have much more time and much more meetings in a day, because the entire day is wasted when you go for a 10 minutes or 15 minutes or half an hour meeting, and there's a lot of traveling, a lot of other things in mind. So initially I thought, but today I'm totally in favor of virtual meetings, and we even in a position to go to meet, but still we say, no, yeah, let's meet at the Zoom now, and I think we can conclude things on Zoom, unless you want to party and have a drink with me some other time, that's fine. But work is work, and let's make it work actually. So I think I'm strongly in favor of the meeting now.
Rupesh, I know you were crisscrossing the country before the lockdown, doing negotiations all over. Suddenly all of that has stopped. Good, bad?
See, I have mixed thoughts on this. If you talk about the overall M&A process, I mean, you can't do an investment just sitting in front of your screen, right? I'm talking about the entire deal process, not just the legal part of it. Obviously, legal part of it is simplest to do virtually, because you can do diligence through data room. People have been doing it for years. You can discuss, negotiate a document over a phone call or over a Zoom call. People have been doing it even pre-pandemic. So those things are simpler. But I think so on that I agree. Yes, virtual is quite seamless. Because you have fixed. People are focused. Both side lawyers are focused. And they make all the efforts to get the deal done as soon as possible, right? There are less distraction. Where I disagree is on the business part of the process. I mean, for a promoter to select between, say, a set of two investors, it's important that he understands the person, he understands the culture from where he's coming from, and same goes for the investor. If I have to invest millions of dollars in a company, and if I have to bet on a particular individual, I need to know how he behaves, how he is as a person, what he drinks, where he lives, what are his tastes, what are his goals in life, right? Because I'm betting on the person. So on that perspective, I think it's virtual may not work. It's a challenge. I mean, there are limitations to know people online. Like you said, I mean, to know somebody really well, you need to have multiple meetings. You need to go for a drink. You need to go for a meal. You need to go for a coffee. It's a relationship building process which takes months, years. So I think that part maybe virtual may not replace. Having said that, I think generally speaking, all of us have experienced that. I mean, virtual can do a lot more than anybody ever expected. Maybe a year back. right? There are a lot of possibilities to get things done virtually. I mean, people are learning virtually. Classes are going. People are doing fancy degrees online. So yeah, I mean, the potential is there. But I think certain aspects, mostly the business aspects, I think, and the investor-promoter relationship, some of those finer aspects would require a face-to-face interaction.
An interesting sort of perspective. And Kaizad, um, I know steel industry, of course, Arcelor is more global, but the industry that you operate in is a little more traditional in India. And a lot of your deals also are with banks, PSU banks, State Bank, etc., where it's more old style. So obviously, organization itself is fairly global, but you also work in an ecosystem where it's still slightly old fashioned, and in-person meetings are the way to do it. So how was your experience sort of, in terms of
I
negotiations?
agree with Rupesh and Sameet to a large extent. The slight thinking slightly different on one aspect. Of course, virtual, there is no substitute to virtual. Virtual is fantastic. It saves time. There are a lot of advantages, a lot of good things in a virtual meeting negotiations. But particularly my experience, I have seen that, but when there is a sticky point, and that sticky point is not getting resolved, it is very important then to meet face to face. Otherwise, then you just endlessly pushing the document back and forth, and you're not able to get a closure to it quickly. And if you're running against time, it's always good to then sit across, and that at that time I have felt the urge that a personal touch is very important. A personal face-to-face meet is important. Otherwise, to a large extent, 90% of the times I feel virtual is seamless. It's really beneficial. And as you rightly said, some of the stakeholders are government, PSUs, banks, although they have also come up to speed in terms of coming on the virtual platform and discussing things and finding solutions to various things. But still, there is enough room, scope for improvement. There is, states still sometimes prefer face-to-face discussions to really come quick closure. And as Rupesh mentioned, particularly in business deals, business folks, they really want to connect face-to-face to see what's going on. That's my view, sir. Sudip.
Thanks. Kaizad, I think the last, before we sort of get into wrap-up mode, Sameet, you had mentioned this about how MCA brought about sort of changes to respond to the pandemic. And there have been different sort of responses. We've had Press Note 3 because government was fearful that Chinese companies would sort of start acquiring Indian companies. That was one of the reasons for why Press Note 3 came around. MCA did a lot of exemptions under the Companies Act to respond to the COVID crisis. SEBI has done its own set of exemptions. Income tax returns, there was some extension granted. There have been various regulatory sort of responses. Of course, there's a the package which was given, IBC was suspended. Overall, I think two sort of questions. One, I guess, what do you make of the overall response by the government? And secondly, anything particular that you thought was interesting or significant that you wanted to talk about? Maybe we can start with Sameet and then just go around the panel.
I think government of India was supportive, particularly in other countries also I'm seeing. But for example, I'm really a witness to the MCA meetings I told you. So secretary himself was doing a meeting with industry leaders, with senior people. Government officials were doing Zoom meetings, asking for suggestions, and they were accepting the suggestion immediately. That's the reason they were one after one, the press note, one after one, the circulation, because the moment they get something to know, they were issuing the circular immediately, so that, you get this. So I think there has been a lot of support from the government side. And the interesting thing, which is that some of the things were actually now becoming permanently also. So government or system and the industry has realized that by giving this exemption, we have seen that nothing has happened. The things have actually worked out very smoothly. So why can't we make it permanently? I'm just giving an example of a shareholders meeting. When there has been 2 years, the shareholder meetings are being held so smoothly, and even the shareholders are happy. Initially we thought that we'll have protests from the shareholders. Now shareholders are happy because sitting in Chennai, I can attend a meeting in Delhi. Can attend meetings. Other people can attend meeting. So industry as well as shareholders both are demanding, let's make it a permanent feature that you can do it. Board meeting, couple of things, people are still saying that initially we thought it's a kind of exemption we have got, it's a kind of extension we have got, but why can't we make it permanently? And government is sincerely thinking of some of the things of making it permanently, and there is a task force sitting on that, saying yes, we have given this exemption, we have given an extension or exception only because of pandemic, but now this is actually becoming very supportive, very comfortable to each and every party, and all the parties are okay to make it permanent. So these are interesting things which has come out only out of pandemic. We have never thought of it actually. So the government have been supportive, and at the same time, people have taken it a very positive way, I would say.
Kaizad, operationally, I think government would probably give you exemptions so that the plants could operate and all of that. Or did you face, or were there regulatory measures that came into existence to sort of facilitate production, or was that a struggle?
No, I think we received full support from the government. And as I mentioned, we were also into oxygen manufacturing. So we supplied oxygen to the government in the peak time of crisis in Gujarat and in other states. Of course, it's a bit of struggle in terms of the mining operations. The mining activities, particularly, there's nothing which the government wouldn't have done. Government provided the support, but transportation of the mineral or the mines which is extracted, that it becomes a challenge because the other stakeholders in the ecosystem are not available. And then there are certain obligations under the mining leases which are expected to be fulfilled. Now those that then becomes a non-compliance, and then there is a huge penalty that gets levied because of those non-compliances. So to that extent, I think we are still in discussions with the government. But other than that, I have personally seen plant operations and the various other stakeholders who are supporting those activities, be it our subcontractors, suppliers, all have been provided support by the government. The government has acted. We would have seen the limitation, even the Limitation Act. There has been, the courts have also provided some leniency, limitations, the suspension of IBC. So there's so much that the government has done to support the industry, and particularly to ensure that NPA assets are to some extent controlled. So I think all in all, I would say a lot government has done, and we have received good support.
One thing I specifically wanted, because it was a very big deal when it sort of was press note 3 on sort of this restriction on Chinese investments. How much have you seen it come up in transactions and being discussed as a issue? It obviously made a lot of headlines, but beyond the noise, do you see it become a big deal in terms of actual transactions or getting FDI in portfolio companies, or have people just sort of learned to live with it and move on? There's no Alibaba, but there's always Walmart to fall back upon.
Yeah, in my experience, it's the latter. People have just, obviously, when you are dealing with somebody who is coming from that part of the world, you do, at least we do basic KYC checks in terms of, just asking for their structure, their ultimate beneficial honest details. Apart from that, we're not doing much on that front. And what I have seen in Indian context, where we are, where in our portfolio companies, where there is subsequent series are happening, new investors are coming in, and if even if we are selling, we are taking a very specific representation from those buyers or investors that they are coming, they are in compliance with that press note, that they don't have any connections in those countries based on whatever they are in the press note. But apart from that, yeah, I mean, it's not changing. It hasn't changed anything, at least in the financial services space.
Okay, since you mentioned warranties, obviously around press note 3, but I guess a related question is anything else that you've seen in recent times in terms of deal terms that have changed? I know people globally at least have been talking about material adverse change, that we now need to say that just because the pandemic has happened, that is not a reason to walk away from a transaction. You need to say that upfront. Any other changes that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, Mac, a lot has been said and spoken about Mac, obviously. Apart from that, I think one thing which when we are selling or when we are investing, both ways, what I think the outside date is becoming longer for transactions, the long stop date. Earlier, if it is say 1 month, 30 days, 15 days, now people are building enough buffer of at least 6 to 12 months, particularly where regulatory approvals, etc., are involved in the process. So long stop date extension is one. The other piece which I have seen is a lot of structuring around the purchase consideration which is happening. Because people are not sure which way the business will go in near future. So, earn-outs are back. For example, in most of our deals, we have earn-outs now. Very focused net working capital adjustment provisions are there. I mean, earlier you will have net working capital adjustment, but they were not that focused. But people are now looking at those provisions very, very carefully. Holdback, retentions. So all those things are coming back in the deals. Apart from that, what I have seen is even the standstill clauses are looked at very, very carefully. Things, the way the business has to operate between signing and closing, ordinary course of business exceptions. They are negotiated quite with a lot of focus from both the sides. Yeah, I think these are some of the aspects apart from Mac, Sudip, which I have noticed.
Kaizad and Sameet, thanks, Rupesh. That was very insightful. Kaizad and Sameet, anything specifically that you are now focusing more on contracts based on the pandemic?
No, I think Rupesh has covered it well, but my view is that people are now really, particularly the force majeure clause, is looked at it more minutely than what was being looked into earlier, and people are also now really factoring in the situation, the pandemic situation, whilst looking at milestone payments, timelines, achievement of timelines in completion of projects, so on and so forth. So those are the things where we are seeing a little bit of a change in the way in which contracts are being negotiated now. More focus is given on, and at the back of the mind, we know for sure that is there. The pandemic situation is playing at the back of the mind, because of which the negotiation is going in a particular direction. Thanks.
Sameet?
I agree with both of them. Actually, people are keeping a lot of buffer now. particularly, even the pre-deal or pre-contract time is taking much more time because negotiation are happening online or, this a negotiation are taking time. Due diligences are obviously taking much more time now. So people are keeping actually time. And the other thing is that, in terms of keeping, he said about the force measure, which used to be a kind of only a boilerplate, we never used to bother about it initially. So it has become a lot of important now. The other thing people are looking at now is that in terms of when you either transaction or acquisition, etc., what is the effect their workforce had in terms of coronavirus, how many people got affected with the virus, is there any customer base or supplier base was the area which was most affected? All these things are also looking into account now. Earlier, we never used to look into that. Plus, have you actually, in terms of your EBITDA, have you actually taken care of the loss you have suffered during the pandemic time, or anything specific, or the insurance policies? Have you taken any claim during that pandemic, or what kind of insurance policies you have? What kind of health insurance you have taken now? So these things have actually additionally added up now in the contract and transactions, which is only due to pandemic that we have learned a lot of other things, I would say.
Thanks, Sameet. So I think just to conclude, I think two questions, and I'll just go around the panel. One is what any lessons that post-pandemic you will sort of continue to apply. And secondly, just as I know because there are a lot of young professionals who are watching this, what is it, how has it been to you, the whole experience been for you on a personal front? How have you managed and how have you coped? Has anything changed for you? So one, lessons for the future, and secondly, as at a personal level, what has changed for you, if you want to talk about that. So maybe I can start with Kaizad. Maybe we start with you and then we just go around the panel.
Sure. I think for me, the lesson is be more digital, rely more on there's a lot that is going to happen in this space going forward. There is a lot of businesses are done in a particular way. There is more and more focus on using the digital platform, and so that's one thing which I have picked up. And the other thing, of course, is that you have to be open to adapt to change. If you are operating in a particular way, like I talked about an example where you need physical copies of documents to read, you change, you adapt to the virtual ways of looking at documents, reviewing documents. So I think change is something which one will have to adapt, be more nimble, be more open to accept changes. The sooner you adapt to those changes, you will be more comfortable instead of trying to just resist some of those changes.
Thank you, Kaizad. Sameet?
I think a lot of things we have actually learned. This was an era of learning. One thing which I realized, and I used to take a pride in that, and I'm sitting in the office and team is sitting with me. If there's any doubt, any of the team member can come in and immediately I give you solution and all. So I used to take, okay, yaar, I'm sitting here, don't worry about that. You always get a solution. Then we realized there's a gap in that. How much we are making our team self-sustainable, how much we are making our team engaged. Now people working from home, if they have any small query, they are not in a position to take decisions sometimes. So I think you have to be able to take decision at these situations. So they have now started taking decision at their own. Initially, everything they used to come to okay, this is what we're doing. Is that okay? I said, okay, go ahead. So then I realized that how much I am actually delegating the work to the team. The way I used to tell them that I am delegating a lot of work and I know team management and this and that. But in fact, when we really feel that when people are working from home, there was no team engagement. They were afraid of calling me again and again because, once if they have called me today, after 5 minutes, something else had happened, team member will not call me, abhi to maine baat kiya tha. So then I realized that, we have to really make them more responsible and more sustainable in terms of taking decision. And then, I started the team member, engaging team member, telling them that take decision on these kinds, don't worry, and, keep on calling me. So then I realized the thing in which I used to take a pride here, but the solution, then solution is something not required. They require their self-decision, in fact, So this was a great learning. The thing is that there has been an impact on team engagement, and now we started realizing the value of engagement, team engagement, because abhi office mein baith ke, when we used to talk about that, we know the people are sitting there, but now sitting at home, what kind of work one is doing, what kind of a coordination required from the other. So, daily types of meetings, engagement, chain of work, so these kind of things. So I think a lot of learning has happened in terms of team management, team engagement, and delegation, I would say.
Thanks, Sameet. Rupesh, final word with you.
Yeah, so on first thing, lessons for future, I guess for lawyers, we need to be more diligent in terms of the contracts which we are executing, signing, because the chances of things falling into dispute are very high nowadays, because the circumstances are changing very quickly, right? So today you might sign something, tomorrow you might change your mind because of the changed circumstances. So it's important that you think ahead when you are negotiating a deal for your client or for your company where you're working. Make sure that you think about the business, a few months or a few years ahead, how it might, what things might go wrong here. Have a very frank chat with the business team. Are you sure you want to do it? You want to have outs in the contract? What kind of termination rights you want? What kind of reps warranties you need? What are the focus areas? For example, supply chains, privacy, technical aspects in IT companies, particularly ESG. So all those things, I think we have to be very, very mindful now, more than the earlier times. So diligent and focused approach on contracts. Look at things from a litigation perspective as well, because it's likely that the litigations will happen in these times. So that's on the future a bit. On the personal experience, I wouldn't say it's a great time for anyone. We all are going through obviously very tough times, but it's important to remain healthy and remain focused, and try to get some personal time for ourselves and our families, and just so that you just remain calm, and when it comes to work, you just do it with proper concentration and attention.
Thank you everyone. It was a great discussion and fairly insightful. So thank you for your time on a Saturday evening with family for this 1 hour. And like everyone on the panel said, I think we've surprised at how adaptive we can be, how resilient we can be. And hopefully we continue doing that. And hopefully at some point we get over the pandemic and go back to leading the old lives, but perhaps with some important lessons from the last 2 years. Thank you everyone.